Hi there, I'm Dave Marks and I'm going to talk you through getting some great bass sounds using the Fafner 2 from EBS. Now this is a beast of an amp. There's lots of controls, there's lots of options, and there's lots of great sounds you can get. So let's go through it in stages and see what it has to offer. First up we have these character filters. Here we see high and low. Now if you've ever used an EBS amp before, there's a little character switch just next to the input which gives us a bass and treble boost and a little bit of a scoop in the mid-range. Here I can have that, turn both of them on, or I can just have one at a time, so maybe take the high off and you can hear that treble boost has come down. Just have the treble boost by itself and it gets rid of a bit of the low end. Both off and I'm back to my pure bass sound. Next to that we have the world-class, world-famous EBS compressor. Here I can dial in a certain amount of compression. The little blue light here starts coming on to show when the compression's being activated. So I can dial in very subtle amounts of it or crank it right up. We get into the EQ and the channels. Now this is where a lot of people look at the Fafner and get worried because there's lots to deal with. You can set it so that it's very straightforward and works just like an ordinary amp. First up we have to engage serial mode. Now there are two ways of running channels. One is serial, where you go through the first channel and that then goes into the next channel, or you can have parallel, which splits your signal and puts it through both channels at the same time. We're going to look at serial first and the options that presents. Let's take a look at the EQ options on the clean channel. We have a bass boost and cut, then we have a mid-range boost and cut and a frequency selector. This allows you to really tune in to which frequencies in your mid-range you want to change. We also have a high Q switch there, which lets you really narrow it down so we can affect a really precise set of frequencies. Then we have a treble control and a clean volume level. Moving on, I'm going to focus purely on this drive part of the channel. First up we have a drive control, so this is the amount of overdrive that we're going to put into the sound, how gritty or dirty we want to make it. And then beyond that we have a mid control here with a frequency selector and edge. If any of you have used the Billy Shane overdrive pedal that EBS make, you should be familiar with this kind of thing. It's about the harshness of the overdrive and then using the EQ to give it a certain character. From fizzy and sort of high-endy to sort of deep, warm, overdriven sound. And then at the end, we have a level control for this drive part of the channel. Next up, let's look at running the channels in parallel. When we had them in series, the clean channel ran into the drive channel, creating one chain. Now we want to run the two channels independently, so my clean channel and my drive channel are now separate. To do that, I hit the serial and then bring the clean volume right down, and this allows me to switch using a foot switch between a totally clean channel and the drive channel. To illustrate this, you can hear it clean and with distortion, and I can work with the EQs to change the actual clean channel sound and the actual overdriven sound, giving me lots of versatility between those two options. Let's have a look at blending our two parallel channels. One of the biggest problems with using overdrive or distortion with a bass is that you lose so much of your clean sound. Sometimes you lose the depth and the sort of heaviness of the bass. So it would be nice to keep that clean channel and also have the distortion running on top of it. In order to do that, I bring my clean level back up here, and I can use the distorted level and the clean level to blend between the two sounds. So if I take the distorted level down, I bring my clean level down, I have the totally distorted sound. I blend them both together and maybe tweak the EQ a little bit. Take the drive right up. And I get a sound that has loads of bite and harshness in the top, but also has that deep low bass underneath it. I can also hit the boost switch here, which gives me a more linear type of distortion. Really sound like a speaker's breaking up there, so it's almost like a fuzz type tone. So if you're playing big riffs and you need to get a really dirty bass sound but loads of bottom end in, this is a great option for that. There's one more switch on the Fafner 2 that we haven't looked at, and that is the tube mode. can see here it's located just next to the drive channel. Now, the drive channel has the tube on all the time, so you get that sort of warm vintage tube sound from it. But by engaging this, we can also use the tube mode in the clean channel. So it gives us the option, if we want, to add that tube sound into our clean signal path. The Fafner 2 has lots of options with effects loops. Basically, there are 3 different ways we can use the effects loop. We can use it in the drive channel, in the clean channel, or a common one for both. Now what this means is I can apply effects that will only affect the drive channel. Let's illustrate that. I'll use a tremolo setting and turn the drive channel right off. So when I play, we just get the clean sound with no effects. As I turn up the drive channel, you'll hear the tremolo coming in. So you can hear that that's only affecting the distorted sound. The tremolo is on that, and my clean sound just goes straight through with no effects at all. This time let's try the opposite. So we're going to put the effects loop in the clean channel and leave the drive channel as it is. An easy way to illustrate this is using my octave bass. So sub-octaves, whenever you want to use that effect, they track best with a nice fat clean sound. If I put the sub-octave on the clean channel and turn the clean channel right down, you'll hear just the distortion channel. And then I dial it in. And this sounds very like the sort of sound you'd hear in Audio Slave or Rage Against the Machine, any of those with really great blends of distorted sounds, sub-octaves and clean stuff, and you can do it all inside the amp. One of my favourite features on the Fafner 2 is that I have dual DI outputs. These are what are called floating balanced outputs, so if there's a difference in the level between them, it automatically gets them level and sends them to the desk. The first one here says pre-EQ. So what happens is as I plug my bass into the amp, before it goes through any of these filters, before it goes through the drive, any of that, it comes straight out the pre-EQ, so pure bass sound. The other one says post EQ, which means I can get all of the adjustments that I make, all of the particular EQ settings or the drive settings I like, and send them as well. And the reason this is really helpful is that in the studio sometimes you make lots of decisions to get a really amazing bass sound, and the producer might say, well, can I get a clean sound as well, just in case we need to tweak it later on? It's not a problem. You don't need any extra gear, no more DI boxes, just send both of them from the amp into the desk. Let's take a look at the back panel on the Fafner 2. Lots of bass players just plug in the front, try and get their sounds right, and then leave it. And there's a lot of cool features built into the back panel that you could be missing out on. First up, we have a line out and a power amp input. Basically, we can use these to slave together 2 amps. So if I was on stage and I wanted to run 2 rigs, I can send from the line out in one into the power amp in the next and control both amps just using one volume. Next up, we have our effects loops. Clean send and return, drive send and return, and then the overall effects sent and return. So just like we illustrated before, this gives you an independent effect loop for your clean channel, your drive channel, and a common one that affects both. Next to that, we have a low-Z input, which you can use for wireless. So if you were sending through a wireless pack, you can plug it straight into the back. If you're having any problems with your wireless on a gig, the radio starts coming through or the batteries go dead, you can just plug straight into the front and it automatically disconnects this. So there's no fiddling around and pulling leads out. Below that, we have our tuner input. So even when the amp is muted, you can still get signal going to your tuner, allowing for silent tuning on stage between songs. And finally, we have the remote inputs here. So we can use the RM4 EBS Maker remote foot switch, which controls our character, our EQ settings, our drive, and allows us to mute the amps. So lots of really powerful options there. The last feature to look at on the back panel is this effects mix control. This allows me to take the common effects loop and blend it in with the sound of the amp. So I can go 0 would be it off, bringing it up to 50% would be running in parallel where I can hear the effects loop alongside my amp sound, and then 100% where I'm only going to get it serial. It's all just one sound. So this allows me to blend in and really control the amount of the effects that I want to hear. The outputs on this amp are speak-ons. Speak-ons are industrial heavy-duty connectors. They clip in, so there's no chance of them rattling or falling out during the gig, and because they're made from high-quality parts, they're going to last you for years. When plugging in cabinets, you have lots of different options. This power amp will automatically run between 2 and 8 ohms. So if you have a 4 ohm cabinet, you plug it in, it works fine. If you have two 4 ohm cabinets, it makes resistance of 2 ohms. And again, it'll just run perfectly. You don't need to flip any switches or change anything. The amp can automatically send enough power out to drive your cabs.